since I'm listening to this way, like this black pill way of seeing the world, I see like that in everywhere I look, I see like a big stance against life, basically, like a really anti-life stance. It can be really, really dark, but it can also be like you have a lot of antinatalists, and also this idea that it's okay to, why does it matter if you're in a simulation or what, is a pretty anti-life stance, right? It's the mildest form of like the idea of, we could just like, basically the idea of an AI girlfriend is not that far away, because at some point you would like to switch off the knowledge about that not being a real girlfriend, right? Like it would be everything you said, like the perfect girlfriend, the way you want it, would be even better if you would just switch off the fact, like the knowledge about you having programmed that girlfriend. Like that would be like the ultimate experience, right? To have forgotten that you even had the girlfriend. So, and then to extend that more even, and which you also do in your video, like you extend that even to like your whole life being a simulation, basically. I think that's a mild form of suicide, right? Like that's a really, really mild form of like like flipping your past existence into past and future, and to break that continuity of consciousness and of recollection of what's happened. And that really like makes me think that there is some really, it's not just intellectual, but it feels like it's more of a lens through which, like a really anti-life and anti-experience valuing, like being anti-life is anti-valuing experience, right? Like I value experience. The reason why I'm talking like this about a relationship is because I value the painful experience as well. I don't just see it as a negative. I see it as also having an amount of positivity in it.
Yeah, I think I can understand what you're saying. I think what you would call anti-life or life, pro-life, anti-life, whatever you want to call it. I think I would call it sentimentality, anti-sentimentality versus pro-sentimentality. There's, for example, I guess you could say it's intellectualizing it a bit. Like I could say, oh, I don't want to have a partner in the real world because of XYZ reason, and then I like make a big list and stuff like this. That would be it could be true, but it would be a very unsentimental way of looking at it, right? You're just looking at it purely on pros and cons. You're almost like analyzing it like a computer, I guess you might say. It is a somewhat unhuman way to analyze the world, to analyze people's situations, because that's simply not how people do things, right?
But you also attribute the value of an experience is purely determined by the amount of pleasure you get from that experience, right? That will be the calculation.
To an extent, it's hard to say because it has to be over time. Like, for example, someone dying in your life might be a good experience for you over a long period of time. Because I've had it happen multiple times. Because I'm a personal trainer, that's my job. I've had multiple times people come up to me and then I ask them, "Hey, why did you hire me as your personal trainer?" And then they say, "Oh, my uncle died, and I just realized how valuable life is." So for example, that could be like a very negative experience leading to a very positive experience. And I would say, in that example, it's kind of hard to say for the individual. You have to do it over a fairly long period of time, as long a period of time as possible in order to get a response. But I agree, generally it's mostly about pleasure maximization. Yeah,
but
I would say.
Do you see how you only manage to give it a positive bent by bringing in a positive consequence or a positive externality that follows from that negative experience? The way I see it is not only can this happen, what you say, I agree, yeah, there can be positive consequences, but I also value just having the pain in and of itself, in the same way that I like eating spicy food, that I like watching a horror movie, that I like going on a roller coaster, that I like bungee jumping, right? You know, like all of these things, like they are and in the same way, a really big heartbreak has a value in and of itself, not only because I'm getting smarter from it or because it has some negative externalities. Life is precious in and of itself, and experience of pain is a it shows that there is life. So it's a marker for life, and that's what makes it valuable in and of itself for me. Like and I think for most people.
I wonder about that. I wonder if it is for most people. I'm not too sure. It could be a cultural thing. It could be because I'm so in the blackpill sphere, black pillow sphere, whatever you want to call it. I think this way. It's hard to say, but I do see what you're saying here. The negative brings value, but just because it needs no reason for its value. Just by its existence, it brings value. You don't need to justify its existence. You don't need to qualify its existence. It's positive because it happened.
Not because of itself, because it's attached to life. Because life is so innately attached to the negative experience. I mean, the premise, the axiom basically on which all humans operate is that life is precious to a certain extent, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I think it's true.
So, and the preciousness of life gives the preciousness to the painful experience because it's part of life.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, I wouldn't agree actually.
It shows that there is life.
But I see where you're coming from with that. I would say I'm not really too sure why I'm like this particularly, but I can't even say why I disagree with you because I don't know exactly. It's just it's almost as if I might be missing something, you might have something which I don't have, whatever it might be, but I just don't feel that way. I don't feel that like I remember I was talking to someone and then I was talking to somebody who was interested in philosophy, and then I brought up the interesting idea, and I said, isn't it interesting that the entirety of existence, everything that we've built as humans, is based upon the unsubstantiated claim that existence for humans is preferable to non-existence, that it is good for us to exist. And I brought that point up, and then they were just like, oh, I guess, I don't know, I never really thought about it like that. And these are like, I don't know how to say it. I feel that there is a sort of questioning of life, which I have, and a lot of, I guess, other black pillars have, a lot of philosophers have. I found this very commonly in philosophy, that is very rare in other people. And I don't really know why exactly that is. I presume that it being rare in other people is a good thing, because I don't know how beneficial it might be to question everything for the average person. But yeah, I disagree, but the reason why I disagree, I can't tell you. It's just the feeling I have. It's just something.
I don't think you disagree. I don't even think that you really disagree.
Okay.
Like
You disagree
I think
with my disagreement.
Yeah, I disagree with your disagreement because I think like when we look at your life, like the way you are conducting your life, you live based upon that premise in all the other areas which are not you basically. Like on all, like you value the life of the dog, you think that the life of the other people around you is precious, and like this idea of life being precious in and of itself, you live by that every day. Like that's most people live by that every day, as long as there is no really big thing. But I think it's just missing for yourself. It's just like something is, I think, in the way. I don't have a conclusion for that. I don't know why this is the case. It's just an observation that I feel like for themselves they don't have this. Yeah, that there is not this value for their own life in the sense of experiences.
Yeah, I think. Have you heard of solipsism before?
Yes, but please remind me. What can you give me the definition again?
So solipsism is pretty much the idea that only you exist. Everything in the world is pretty much like a figment of your imagination.
Cartesian doubt, in the sense of Cartesian doubt.
Yeah, in fact, yeah, exactly, yeah. And I was a solipsist. You could say I am a solipsist now, but I don't act like one, I guess you might say. But then there's this solipsistic argument that pretty much says that if everything is in my head, then why would I want to destroy any of it, right? If everything is effectively me, then why would I want to damage anything if it is me? Why would I want to damage myself? But then you could counter that point with what you said before. It seems that there is almost a void which people might have where they value the experiences of the other but not of the self, not of themselves. And I don't know what to really say about that critique because it is a fair critique. Because, hmm, yeah, I would agree with what you're saying, but I don't know necessarily if someone acting that way um about the world, acting that way towards the world, necessarily follows, because I could say I'm just acting in an inconsistent way. Like I could say through my socialization I am acting this way, even though how I'm acting is logically does not follow. Like people do this a lot with morality. People rarely explain their morality. Even an explanation into morality would make people look at you with like imagine if I was to tell you, hey, imagine if I was to say to you, hey, I'm not a cannibal because I think that humans would taste weird. You're gonna look at me like, whoa, hold on, what do you mean? And that's not, you shouldn't have a reason for not being one. You just shouldn't be one out of principle. And that is
Or out of
because,
disgust.
yeah, I'll discuss, yeah, sure, whatever, yeah.
I mean,
But I
I
would
don't
say
really
that,
care about you. I would trust more in your disgust than in your principles. Let's say it like this, right?
yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
it could be discussed. You could say that principles and discuss are sort of interwoven together with each other. For example, it used to be very common for men, women, children. They used to have little stalls for children and women to sit on so they could see what was happening when it came to drawing and quartering events, right? Where people were like beheaded, and then their limbs were drawn by horses, and then they would like get skinned and beheaded, whatever would happen. And then little kids would watch that. They'll be having a great time of it, you know. I would say that disgust and socialization are somewhat interplay with but that doesn't really matter too much for the purposes of what I'm talking about. But I think that what you're saying, I lost my train of thought here a bit now.
I mean,
Um,
my
yeah,
current thesis, and please everybody that is listening to this and you as well, take this with a pinch of how do you say pinch of salt, grain of salt,
yeah, grain of salt, yeah,
grain
grain
of
of salt, yeah,
salt.
yeah.
Uh, I think it's depression, to be honest. Like it really fits into everything I know about. I think I know about depression, and it really makes sense to, yeah, it really sounds like a rationalization of a depressed mind. But that's just my current feeling about it. It might change. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's depression. I did have somebody, I did have someone in my comment section. I said something about the desire to have friends or whatever, and then they were saying, "Oh, it sounds like you're depressed." And then I was like, I'm not depressed. I think I'm okay. I'm fine." And they was like, "No, man, you're depressed. Trust me." I was like, "How was this guy know I'm depressed before I know I'm depressed? How is this happening?" And I found that to be sort of funny, but yeah, the idea this stems from depression. There's a quote that goes along the lines of no philosopher ever has a good life. To become a philosopher, you have to have some negative event. To question the world must give
Pythagoras
you a
had
reason
a
to question it.
awesome life. Pythagoras had a really, really good life.
Um, Pythagoras.
Yeah.
Did he? Wasn't
I
he in like
think,
a
yeah,
cult or
he
something?
wasn't he like a huge businessman, and he had like he bought like oil like olive fields, and predicted predicted some weather stuff, and became like super rich, and made like the first he basically did like the first short selling in the history of mankind or something like that. I'm not sure, maybe I'm mistaken, but
Oh, I did. That was Parmenides who did that. No, not Parmenides. So
really
it was Thales, or is that where he was from? These people, their names were
that
confusing
could
because
be.
they don't
Yeah,
have
yeah,
last
yeah,
names.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it might have been the
It might
Thales
be
of
that I'm
Miletus,
mistaken.
I think that's who it was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
could be.
because they, yeah. I think Pythagoras used to worship beans. If I remember correctly. Anyway,
But wait, you say that
yeah.
you need some amount of pain to that again feels like rationalizing like yeah, okay, so all right, let's hear it. So you say you need some pain for
Yeah, I think. Well, it's just something which I found to be common in philosophy. Philosophers normally are either social outcasts or have or have like fairly bad lives. Though that could just be a product of them being like fairly smart and fairly smart people. I think the smarter you are above like 110 IQ or 120 IQ, you just get more and more depressed. I'm pretty sure that was something which I found out. But I feel like for a lot of these philosophers, they often have some big negative event in their lives, or their lives generally have a lot of pervasive negative event. Like Schopenhauer, for example, he was a big pessimist
he was a
philosopher.
black pillar,
He,
right?
yeah, he was he was
Yeah.
one of the first, one of
He
the
was
OG
black pill
black
before it
pillars.
was
Yeah.
cool, yeah.
Exactly. What a guy. He blackpilled Nietzsche. What a guy. He was blackpilling everyone. But yeah, his life was, you could say, pretty bad. He was poor for most of his life. Sorry, he wasn't poor for most of his life, but he was unsuccessful for most of his life. He never found success in the academic field until he was really, really old. Then he got famous, and then he was like, all of these people come wanting to talk to me, but I'm old now, and I don't want to talk to anyone because I'm old and grumpy and whatever. Um,
Yeah, he had like
yeah,
3 years
like
of success, I think. 3 years in
yeah, yeah,
total, yeah.
yeah,
And then
something
he
like that.
died, yeah.
Yeah, and then Nietzsche had like chronic illnesses, and then he went insane after he wrote all of his books. Kierkegaard had like a fairly bad life, and his works are somewhat of a reflection of that. You have Sartre, who felt very envious of his peers because of how he looked, which could also be sort of a black pill adjacent thing. So all of these people sort of have negative lives, and I think what I said before, I still stand by that. I think that you having some amount of I think that life has to present to you a problem in order for you to question it. I think that not introspective, I think that intellectualizing issues comes from the world not presenting itself to you how you would expect it to be presented. I don't know necessarily if that is
From a lack of
depression.
control?
Sure, a lack of control, I guess you might say. But all a lot of pain comes from a lack of control, right?
Sure.
But yeah, I would say that I don't know if it's depression. I don't think depression is the right word for it. But I see what you mean. The sort of life denial which is common in depression is also common with black pillars. But yeah, I don't know.
I mean
Maybe if you
yeah.
elaborate a bit on the life denial point, then I can talk more about it. Like what else have you seen other than me in terms of life denying characteristics in black pillars, other than antinatalism, which we already spoke about?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the obvious one that just like pathologically, like factually, a lot of black pillars and incels are depressed. Like that's
Yeah,
just a
true.
certain amount of percentile. That's just a certain percentage that is factually depressed. Then you have the antinatalists, which we already talked about it. But then you have like the whole way of seeing life is without the value for experiences. Like without that, that's like my main point. And experience is tied directly to life. Pain, joy, like this is all two sides. This is two sides of the same coin, and they can't exist without each other, and they're both tied to life. And this idea of, okay, I'm just gonna live a life that is trying to avoid pain as much as possible sounds like to me like a very anti-life stance, you know? And
Yeah, I do.
just
I think.
I mean, we all could like live more more safe lives, right? Like we could all try to live a life that is optimizing for minimal pain. But that's just not life. Like that's the minimal pain would be, as I've said, the basically putting yourself in a simulation and making everything great and switching off the memory of you putting yourself in there, right? Which is to me a form of suicide, because you're killing the past you that put themselves into this machine, right? That's like you're saying goodbye forever to that being, and you're living a new life. And that's why I'm also saying it's depressive. Like at the end of your video, I was like, it was great that you're a mind that is like, so you have you're a smart guy. Like you directly recognized that giving yourself an AI girlfriend is basically very similar to putting yourself in a simulation completely. You directly made that leap, because when I heard you talking about the AI girlfriend, I was having that thought as well. And then you made that point for yourself. That was pretty great and introspective moment, I think, that you made that.
Yeah.
I want to, if you have something to add, please feel free.
Yeah,
But
I just have one last.
Sure.
I just have one tiny last thing to add
Sure.
on to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that living in a dream world where you forget that you're actually in the dream world, I think that that is one of my aims. That is like a reality which I would like for myself. Yeah, which okay, it's funny that you can tell. I don't know, I didn't know it was so obvious, but that's a good thing, I suppose. That is that is an aim which I have for myself, and I think it should be available to everybody who wants to live like that. What you've said, I can understand it, but like I said before, I disagree with it simply because I don't value experiences just because they are experiences. I don't value things just because they are. I have to value things dependent on the pain and the pleasure which they give me. That's just how I value things. I don't know why that might be, and I don't even know how I would find out why that is the case. You have some theories. I don't know, but that's pretty much all I'd say.
Mm-hmm.